October 31st can only mean one thing. Candy. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and what a day it is. Happy Halloween to all of you out there that are viewing this video, and certainly to all of my Rotted Soul subscribers. Happy October 31st. So, I thought it's been a little while since I've tackled a franchise. I started doing franchise reviews when I just kind of plowed through the entire Puppet Master series, which was daunting to say the least. And I thought, what better day and what better franchise to kick this off than October 31st, 2019, beginning with the Halloween franchise. It's a little mainstream popular for something. I mean, this channel typically kind of deviates from the well-trod path, but I figure may as well get it out, get it under my belt, and get it done, especially considering the fact that they are releasing and making new movies, and I kind of want to get to reviewing them. So may as well lay the groundwork and start with the original. So today's review is going to be of the original 1978 Halloween movie. And basically, I'm just going to keep plowing through them day after day until they are done. Remakes and all. So, starting with the 1978 one, okay, this is a classic. You all know the story. Michael Myers and so forth escapes from the mental institution and goes and wreaks havoc on Haddonfield, Illinois, and is followed up by his former doctor, Dr. Loomis, and basically it turns into an all-out, grudge match with, Laurie Strode as the babysitter that he is attacking. Okay, so, I mean, the groundwork's already laid. Everybody knows the story, everybody knows the character, but what I wanted to address is a few things. First of all, I am going to be scoring this one, and I am going to be reviewing it, and I do want to preface that by saying that being a cultural icon legend does not influence the scores on this one, all right? Every single score that I give on a Rotted review is of the film on its own merit as it's presented to me on the screen. Anything outside of that, any cultural relevance, any historical impact that the movie has made does not factor into the scoring system. It does factor into how much it's in my heart, but it doesn't factor into the score because the score must remain objective and neutral and even a playing field across the board. So that's my big warning on this one. But that being said, of the three major slasher franchises, I know a lot of people credit this one as being the first slasher. Fact is, it's absolutely just not. But I will say that this is the first slasher that does something unique in terms of developing an iconic character, insofar as something that can be latched on. I mean, we had the 1974 Black Christmas, you had Bay of Blood, we had Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I would argue is not really necessarily that much of a slasher, more of just kind of a cannibal redneck thing. And as far as Leatherface goes, I honestly think that the scariest part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise was the entire family and the notion of these characters being isolated amidst all these people. So as far as one individual slasher, big beefy character goes, Leatherface, I mean, he's in there, but he's not really kind of as iconic as the rest. Anyway, I'm deviating. Okay, back on track. But this really set the original 1978 John Carpenter Halloween really set the tone as far as coming up with a villain that has just an absolute iconic visage. And the character, the score, everything about this there's really not much else way to put it, good marketing potential behind it. I mean, everything about it was well polished, well developed. I mean, even if it wasn't meant to be, even if it was just kind of throwing it out there as an inexpensive movie to make, inadvertently or purposefully, it turned a character into an absolute cultural icon. Just the silhouette framing, especially if he's holding the knife, and the score, it immediately conjures up Michael Myers as the killer in Halloween series. And in the same way that I'm going to say, okay, top three major slasher franchises of Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. Of those three, I would say that Halloween and the Michael Myers character is my favorite. And I know that that's going to cause some divisiveness and some hullabaloo. But the fact is, there's something about this movie and something about this character as the franchise goes on. Even especially in compared to as the franchise goes on with the other two series. I think that there's one thing about this that I really, really enjoy. Well, actually, two things, but they kind of coincide. Simplicity and consistency. There's a level of consistent quality, I think, throughout this entire series that, I mean, yes, it wavers, but it doesn't spike and dip as nearly as hard as especially Nightmare on Elm Street. Some of those get really ridiculous really fast, but then there's also some really solid entries in there. I mean, going from 1 to 2 to 3 and so on. Whereas I think that, and then you have situations like with the characters themselves and the plots and the storylines where the thing I love about Michael Myers as far as the simplicity goes is where they have the opportunity, especially as the course of the franchise goes on, to have all sorts of different backstories developed and so on, where, oh no, he's not just an insane person. He has he was born of a mother of an insane asylum thing that happened to have black magic associated with it because a leprechaun tossed a coin into a thing and somebody made a wish on a unicorn and a rainbow, and that developed into a satanic ritual that caused him to put on a William Shatner mask. He's evil. That's it. And that's the thing I really loved about this movie is the simplicity behind it, the simplicity and the consistency. He was evil, and it never really deviated from that. There was blackness behind his eyes. He was evil. And the thing that made that work really well was the Donald Pleasence character of Dr. Loomis. He sold the simplicity of the character and the intensity of the situations so well, and the fact that he stayed so long on the franchise consistency made the Halloween movies work for me more than the other two, as much as I did enjoy the other two. But that's why, of the three, I would say Halloween is my favorite. But specifically targeting this particular movie here, again, simplicity is what I love about this one. He's just evil, he's just menacing, he's just foreboding, and he just wants to kill people for absolutely no reason other than the fact that he's evil. And his doctor is on his tail, and together they must, the doctor and Jamie Lee Curtis playing Laurie Strode, not necessarily together, but they ultimately have to fight the evil and overcome the killer. Now, I'm going to go and throw up all the scores here. Please bear in mind the warning that I gave before, but he has always 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points, and the total possible score of 100 points. And you'll notice that the lowest score on this list is the plot. And the reason for that is because as much as I enjoy the simplicity of this really also didn't have a whole lot of meat on the bones. Just because it's a simplicity of character and simplicity of tone doesn't necessarily mean that we need to have so much, not really necessarily filler, but there's just a whole lot of downtime in this movie that could have been filled with a little bit more character development, a little bit more, dialogue. There was a fair bit lacking in terms of plot in this one. So what I saw, I enjoyed, but it was pretty much kind of stretched out to get to the point where the action was really happening and we wound up with our, big fight at the end. So, I mean, really judging it objectively with what it brought to the table, simplicity doesn't necessarily have to mean boring, but in this case, I would say that if I were to objectively analyze the movie, I would say that about the halfway mark, I did find myself getting a bit bored with it. It does ramp up, it does redeem itself, but just on a written plot level, I really couldn't give it higher than above average. I tend to consider 12, 13 about, dead on average. As far as the intent goes, I mean, this actually was great. I enjoyed it. It was scary. It was thrilling. It was, fun. So as far as the intent goes, what it was intending to deliver, I think it absolutely did, and that gives the high score of all of them. And the acting, I thought, again, Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasence sold this movie, and I think that I'm not going to compare it to the others right now just because they're going to have their own reviews, but I would say that the performances that they have in here, especially considering that I believe that this was Jamie Lee Curtis's first role, she really did a fantastic job. I mean, Scream Queen aside, she really brought something to the Laurie Strode character even before everything started really shaking up and going down, that I really identified with, and I really felt for her, and that made the action when it happened all the more powerful. So I really did enjoy the acting performances in this one, so definitely some high marks there. Again, nothing epically high, but definitely better than you would think for a low-budget blood and guts slasher movie. And the technical gets a 20 out of 25. Just because I think that mostly comes down to, I mean, there's not a whole lot. I mean, if you think about it, especially in the world of slasher movies as what they developed into, as far as blood and guts and gore and so forth, there really wasn't a whole lot to be had here. There were some good shocking moments, but mostly I think what this comes down to is the camera work, the editing, and the score, all of which were massively on point. Big kudos to John Carpenter for doing so much with so little. Anytime I think of a low-budget horror movie that's made today that just seems cheap and hackneyed, and if anybody ever says, well, look at the budget that they had, I said that's absolutely no excuse. There is no excuse for a budget to hold you back in terms of quality of film that's presented. If it limits your options, through strife, creativity is born. If it limits your options, rise above them. Make a good movie. There's absolutely no excuse not to, certainly not money. And this is a perfect example of why that is proven. John Carpenter did such a great job in terms of the camera work, the editing, to provide a lot of the scares. A lot of the scares were just implied by one character being there, cut, back over, not there anymore. And it works extraordinarily well. I mean, it may seem like a cheap method now, but honestly, it's not really necessarily the method as it is the execution of the method. And John Carpenter really nailed it. So I have absolutely no problem giving a really high score to the technical achievements of this film. And all of that definitely impacted the intention. Okay, as far as wrapping this review up, would I recommend this movie? Of course. I mean, it is an icon. It is a cultural icon for a reason. It is great for a reason. And of course, I would absolutely recommend the first 1978 Halloween movie. So, I mean, I really don't have a whole lot more to discuss with that. Look for me, tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, so I'll definitely be doing a review. Look for me tomorrow as I review Halloween 2, The Return of Jamie Lee Curtis. So thank you very much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. And if you want to support me further, my Patreon and my merchandise storefront links are below. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.